You could starve in the woods standing next to food. This tree is a valuable part of a food system for wild edibles. We're going to talk about some berries too. Berries produce fruit in the summer, and there's usually lots of food around in the summer, so they're really amazing. But the food that lasts through the winter is like the nut trees. This is a black walnut. We'll go find some leaves. That's a black walnut leaf. Well, yeah, I smelled it. It's just definitely a black walnut leaf here. This is a smaller tree, so you need to see the leaves to identify it maybe. In the fall, they'll drop nuts, which are big green balls, about a little bit smaller than a fist. And the way to get the best flavor and most survival food production off of black walnuts is to crush those right away when they're still green. Get the whole green hull out off of them, and then you get a much sweeter nut. If you wait a couple weeks, then it is tough to actually eat them as a full-time survival food. We'll talk about hickory nuts later in the video, and those are even more important than black walnuts. These black raspberries are going to be ripe very soon, and they're a very delicious option. They usually have a purple stem, like this one, and black berries when they're ripe. And they're native throughout the eastern U.S., as is the black walnut and most of the plants we're going to be talking about in this video. The next plant I want to talk about is these heart-shaped leaves. They are called violets. These violet leaves are edible. I'm going to try one here on camera and tell you what I think of it. I don't know if they're palatable. I could eat that. It's a tiny bit nutty, but not real bad, and I might be putting that in my salad for tomorrow. Okay, yeah, I think I'm going to pick some and put them in a salad. Alright, in this shot I have two different plants that I want to talk about. This is a grape leaf, and they're producing wild grapes. This is like loaded because there's that bundle, there's this bundle, there's that bundle. They produce in late fall when a lot of other foods are already done, so that's going to be really cool. The other plant that this grapevine is growing on is spice bush. That has red berries that are spicy and delicious also in the fall. And I didn't say about the best part about a violet is the flower, which I'm not seeing any flowers yet. Hopefully I find a couple here, but a couple weeks ago I had them in a video. And so the flowers of the violet plant are edible. Okay, I want to talk about this spot here, because there's the black walnut tree. The raspberries are right over there, about 15 feet away from me. Here I've got the grapes and the spice bush and the violets. And so this is an abandoned pasture. We had sheep in here about 7 years ago, and maybe 8 or 9. Haven't really had any animals in here since. It's grown up a little bit, but not real bad. It was already a wooded, because that tree is a lot more than 8 years old. Maybe that tree in the middle there, that was probably pretty small when we last had sheep in here. And I'm finding a lot more other plants in here. This plant is not specifically something I'm going to tell you is edible. It's called giant ragweed. It is so plentiful. If anybody has a use for it, please, please, please tell me in the comments what you use giant ragweed for. Because to me, it's just one of the most annoying weeds besides poison ivy. But I found another really interesting plant here, still in the same little tiny area. This is a elderberry. I hope to find some bigger plants later on in the video. But for right now, it's got a similar leaf to, it's like a smaller tree obviously, but similar leaf to those black walnuts we saw at the start of the video. And down here, we're May 10th right now. So in my hand there is a chickweed. That's a little bit earlier crop as well, but they're still alive here at this spot in the woods. Woods, pasture, somewhat sunny ground. I don't know what it is. I've got some sunny places, some other trees to show you later on in the video. And I think there's a couple more really interesting things here in this woods, this area, before I go further. So the chickweed, you're just going to eat the whole plant. Elderberries, they have some uses for the leaves and the flowers, but the main thing is actually the berries, which are ready for about 1 week in August, and I usually miss them. So it takes pretty good care to actually hit those at the right time. Alright, that's me eating the chickweed. One of my favorite wild greens. I took one step and I've got another plant to talk about. This is called Japanese honeysuckle. It is not a native plant here in the US, but it's still an important one. So there's many herbal medicinal things, but what I do is I take that little point on the end right from my fingers, the back of the flower, and I chew on that. And it's very sweet and delicious. So you have to pick a lot of flowers to get much food out of it, but a very delicious food when you eat that. So I'm only eating like 1/8 of an inch off the end of the flower. Here. There, it's in my fingers. And take a bite. There's just a little bit less in the fingers. So yeah, other than eating the little bits, I don't know much about this plant, but I know people talk about it. It has some medicinal properties I'm not super familiar with. As do the elderberries. Have medicinal properties. Alright, this is what I call a wild Indian strawberry or wild strawberry. It's not the delicious type, water strawberry maybe. There's your leaves. There's a little berry. I'm going to pick one and pick a leaf and put them in a bag because I'm doing wild food talk tomorrow. That's why I'm out here. When they say leaves of 3, they're not talking about these strawberry leaves. They're talking about other leaves that we'll get to later in the video. Took 2 more steps and found greenbrier. And this leaf I'm going to eat on the video too. Okay, I would recommend the more tender leaves like this. Let's try that. Yeah, the tender leaf is good. So greenbrier is an edible leaf. It also has a root which I think has medicinal properties. So yeah, but there it is. Alright, I found some poison ivy here, and so that leaf of 3 right there, those are ones you don't want to touch or eat. This plant is a wild garlic here. It's got a seed top, like a garlic scape on the top. And there's a bunch around here. I'm about 20 feet away from that tree originally, maybe 30. So, finding more plants. These you can pull up and eat like a root vegetable. You can dig these almost any time of the year. They're probably easier to find during the early growing season, and like probably February through June will be the easiest times to find them. In June, if you know where they are, you can harvest them and store them. But that's a long harvest window compared to some of these other crops in the wild food space. This plant I don't know much about, but it's called a Russian olive, and it's not a native plant, but it has these little things that get a little bit bigger, sort of like an olive. I have no idea what edibility and usefulness they have, but tell me in the comments if you know. And it has like these kind of almost like an apple or a bay leaf type leaf on them, and where they grow they're usually quite plentiful, so if you can figure out how to use them productively, you can get a lot of food off of that each fall. Here we're still only 20 feet away from that tree that we started with, and we've got a full-size elderberry plant with flower buds almost ready to bloom. And this is like, I don't know, 8 feet tall, 7 feet wide. It's a pretty nice sized plant. Don't want to skip this type of tree. This is a cherry tree, a black cherry. Usually when you have black in the name of a plant, it's because it's less wonderful for human food than some of the other trees. So they're kind of a strong flavor. Got a lot of herbal nutritional value though, if we can find a way to pick them. If it's a tree this tall, I don't know how you're picking those berries or cherries, but some of these small ones, like this one, are easy to pick if they have them in cherries on them. Still in the same 20 feet circle around that first tree, and this is a hackberry, and I think it has berries or nuts that you pick in the fall that have food value. I'm not really an expert on this tree, but I know it exists. I'll show you the bark because it's really crazy bark. See that tree in the middle? Maybe I can get a better look from this angle. Alright. Kind of really like knobby type of bark. Hope that helps you figure that one out. Okay, this plant is poke. I think there is a way to cook it when it's small. This is probably too big for that. But it also has berries that you can use for like a wild ink if you wait till they ripen in the fall. Down here we got a lot more of those Indian strawberries, or water strawberries, or whatever you want to call them. I'm going to eat this one. Tastes like water. This plant is called cleavers, and it like clings to your clothing as you walk by sometimes, especially if it breaks off, and it has some medicinal uses. I'm not really up to date on what those are, but if that's something you're looking for, that'll help. Alright, this plant I don't even know a name for it. I call it wild mint. You could tell me if you break it off. It smells intensely minty. But what I want to use it for in an emergency situation is like a mint tea. You're probably going to have to boil your water, and so if you're in a survival situation, and so using this to flavor your water will make it much more functional, much easier to survive out there. And this is usually very prevalent and can be harvested from early or mid-spring, early April probably until August. You'll get a lot more quantity and a little lower quality as you get into July and August. But definitely want to dry some of this for the winter if you're ever in a survival situation. Then make tea, because a lot of the water sources when you're surviving are going to need to be boiled. They might not taste great, but if it's tea, it's going to taste a lot better. Okay, and now I'm back into a parking lot. We're going to show you some of the wild foods here. We still have violet leaves. You do want to be worried about or concerned about chemical contamination, but if you feel like you got a safe place to eat food from, there's violets here. This plant is not edible as far as I know. It's called buttercups. It's a beautiful flower. Love to hear if you have any uses for it, because I don't. This next plant is called broadleaf plantain. That's definitely something you eat. We also chew it up and put the what you get out of it in a poultice on certain types of wounds, or maybe not chew it up, maybe just crush it and put it on a wound. But yeah, so this will be in a lot of places where you find mowing and stuff. It can grow under mowing. This leaf right here got cut off by a mower here not too long ago. And one of my favorite, or most common plants is dandelion. The flowers have use, the roots have use, and the leaves have use. So the leaves we'll usually use in a salad early in the springtime. The flowers, we'll take them when they're nice and fresh, like right now, and pick a whole bunch of them and dip them in bread dough and make what we call a dandelion fritter. Cook those, and that's always fun. Here's a better look at the dandelion leaf. It gets extremely strong as you get into the later spring and summer. Early spring and late winter is when you want to eat that. But I'm going to try to dig it up with a shovel, because the root is the most powerful part of the plant. And so dandelion root there has a lot of nutrients, and like a lot of herbal books will say they use this for like cancer treatments and stuff like that. I'm not a master herbalist, so I just say research what you do with dandelion root for yourself. And I think it's edible. I think they make a coffee substitute out of this too. Alright, now I'm out in the sun, but here's a plant that I really want to show you. I've only found it out in the sun. This is a narrow leaf plantain, where the other one was a broadleaf plantain. This is the broadleaf. It's got like a round leaf. This is narrow leaf. They have almost the same use, and they're found in most of the same places, but they're two different plants. Here's the seed stems. Anyway, I hope that helps find those and use them. They're really good for bee stings. Talking about bees, I see a bee here. Don't know if the video will show it, but there's bees working these white clover blossoms. White clover and red clover. Red clover is like 5 times as big. Seed heads, well, double the diameter. And the leaves are bigger too, but these are edible leaves, edible flowers, I think. And the red clover, I don't know if I'll find any today for this video, but they're pretty good too. This tree is not native, but it's a plentiful producer of food. The settlers in the 1800s planted these intentionally. They're mulberry trees. They were growing silk on them at the time, but they also provide a delicious berry. I'm not sure we're ever going to be back into producing silk phase, but maybe you will be. So this is the plant. This is the leaf. They have red berries. Most of them are red or purple berries, and then there's a few white mulberry varieties out there. They're harder to find. Definitely want to consider that for food, because if you picked a lot and stored them, you could have berries stored for the winter off of even just a couple big trees of these. The next loaded food producer is blackberries. We showed you black raspberries earlier, but these blackberries will soon be producing loads of juicy fruit. Again, they usually come in large patches. They're thorny, so you got to be careful with that, but when you start picking them, you can get a lot of food. And here's the leaf. Here's the stem. Anyway, that's one of the top food producers for the summertime. Okay, later on in the video I'll talk about maple trees, but here's a close-up of the leaves on a small plant. I will try eating a leaf here. It's very tough. Probably could eat it in an emergency, but that's not going to be my first choice for raw salad greens. It is edible leaves, though, if that interests you. Alright, later on we're going to get to the hickory trees, but here's a close-up on hickory leaves. They come in these leaflets with about 7 leaves, and there's a whole bunch on top of the plant. That's all one stem. And hickory nuts are probably one of the most under-considered food groups, because if you have a couple of big hickory trees, they'll produce potentially hundreds of pounds of nuts per year. And they're a high-density, high-calorie food. When I did see the bees, I should have told you about honey. Honey is a possibility for raw food. But hey, let's talk about this. This is sassafras. It's got 3 leaf types. It's got the Three-lobed leaf, zero-lobed leaf, and there should be a two-lobed leaf somewhere too on it. I'm not seeing one on this, but that has a pungent root beer type flavor. There's a two-lobed leaf. So they're all on one stem, and there's going to be a pungent root beer flavor, whether you're using the leaves or especially the roots. The roots are the thing most people get off of the sassafras, and makes a root beer flavored drink. Alright, this is actually a Bradford pear, which is not really a edible fruit, but it's pears in general are edible fruits. And apples have a similar leaf. I also want to talk about things like plums. These do grow wild around the eastern US. And so knowing that you can eat them if you find a fruit that you recognize, whether it's apple, plum, peach, whatever, or especially these pears, if you actually found a good pear tree, not this one, those would be a valuable food source as well. And this tree is a maple tree, huge, and you can tap this in late winter, I think you tap it late January and then keep on drawing sap until it stops producing. So you'll drill a couple holes in the trunk, a couple inches deep, and the sap runs out of those holes. You have to have a plan to collect it into a bucket or something like that. And then you boil that sap down. For every 40 gallons of sap, you should get about 1 gallon of maple syrup. And that's one of your top calorie density foods you will find out in the wild. So definitely recommend having that. It'll be part of your survival plan if you ever think you might be out in the woods surviving off of the land. And this tree is a hickory tree. I showed you the leaves earlier, but there's going to be little tiny nuts about the size of your thumb all around it. In the fall, you collect those and crack them open, and you've got an amazing food source. And most other people are going to walk right by it. Now, the one thing I didn't talk about animals or fish. In a survival situation, hunting is going to get really difficult really fast because everybody else will be hunting too, and soon there won't hardly even be like squirrels or rabbits in your area, which will be good for your garden, but not so good for your food production if you were planning on eating animals. Like deer especially are going to be, once there's no government telling you when you can hunt and hungry people, deer will be gone very fast and very hard to find. So having plants, the plants are going to be much less pressured to be food sources. Fish are probably intermediate. If they're in a waterway, people are going to try to fish them, but they're probably not going to get overfished quite as easily. But that is not my specialty, so focus on learning the plants so you survive, and then maybe fish will be fun if you like meat, but definitely these nut trees. I didn't get to an acorn tree, an oak tree. The oak trees are a little more difficult to use as food. Well, I finally found a hickory nut. So that's what they look like. They usually have a pointy tip at the bottom. I'll show you the tree that they're under. They're not under that shagbark hickory. This is a different type of hickory, but definitely a hickory leaf. And definitely a tall, tall tree. This tree fell down a few years ago, but it is an oak tree, so it'll be a good backdrop for talking about acorns. You probably know what an acorn is, but they have like a tannic acid that's not really edible. So the way to prepare oak nuts or acorns is to boil them in water, throw away the water, and repeat that a couple times until they come out as edible, tasty nuts. Here's a red clover. You can see it looks a little bigger here than the white clover. And I'll put those in my bag too. Sorry, that was by a road and I had to run across the road quick because there was traffic coming. Here is a huge, healthy poison ivy plant. Those leaves are almost as big as my hand. Don't eat the poison ivy. Try not to even touch it. Okay, this is burdock. I don't really consider it palatable or delicious. I know people do grow it for food, but I don't know much more about it than that. But what we use it for is burn care. And some other injuries. My wife, when she hurt her foot a year ago, which was a pretty bad sprain, and she was off her foot for several days, not walking. We used this on that, but we've also used it on burns. It's supposed to reduce pain, and so I'm going to pick some of that for my class tomorrow. And there's one more plant I hope to find, but don't know if I'll be able to show it to you or not. Well, this is not the last plant, but this is another spot with these onions, garlic, something. Alright, they didn't even come up. They just broke off at the top, which is a survival mechanism, because that means the plant still exists for next year. And I've got some edible greens, can cook with it, but I didn't actually kill the plant. Well, this bush doesn't want me getting to where I thought I was going.